Oh, this is embarrassing. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to an episode of The Artenders with Mac and Dan. I am Dan, he is Mac.
Howdy!
I just want to say that we started this recording with the microphone muted because I am incompetent and a nincompoop. So we're currently
We're out of our element. We're out of our element.
A little bit. Whenever we take an extended period of time off, there's always a little bit of time to get back into the swing of things. And, and because of me moving and because of, some extenuating circumstances. But nevertheless, we are back. We're back at it again. And we are reviewing a movie titled Parasite.
Parasite.
It is a Korean film that came out in 2019 and won Best Picture. It is a movie directed by Bong Joon-Ho. And
Rightfully so. I'm showing my cards early, but rightfully so.
Yes, but also before we begin, Mac, I got a little bit of beef with you.
What the hell?
Well, because for the last podcast, the last episode that we had, which was our Remember the Titans episode, you said that we were going to review Remember the Titans. Parasite.
Yeah.
And then only a few days later, you were like, scratch that, we're reviewing something else. And I was like, absolutely not, because you know what we're not going to be, Mac? Frauds.
Okay. Well, we're not frauds. We know at the very minimum we're not.
Well,
frauds.
you were close. You were flirting with it. You were on the line.
I know. And I'm glad that you kept me on the straight and narrow. The thing is, it's just I found something that me and everyone around me had been talking about so much, but you promised that we would talk about that next time. So we'll talk about that when we get there. Stay to the end to find out what that is. But we're here to talk about Parasite.
Yes.
We're here to talk about Parasite, and I am going to go ahead and start out with this.
Okay.
I think that this movie is not only fantastic, and not only the best movie of the year it came out.
Okay, yeah.
I think that this is one of the best movies I can even think of.
Yeah, is that like a sizzle serve? Like what?
I don't think it's a sizzle serve. I think it's a popular opinion. I think this is widely renowned as one of the best movies ever made.
Now let's
already
to give a little bit of context, at least to the story of the film, at least described on IMDb. Greed and class discrimination threaten the newly formed symbiotic relationship between the wealthy Park family and the destitute Kim clan. And it is so brilliantly constructed, this film. However, now, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong. So this is not the first time you watched this movie, right? Was this your second viewing for this review?
This was my third.
Okay. So can you walk me through the experiences, particularly with your body? And that sounds like a weird question to have.
That's a very good question.
But I've never, at least for me, Mac, I've never experienced a film that made my body contort in such a way that I originally, when I saw it in theaters for the first time, I curled up into a ball. And I said to the friend of mine who was watching it, who's actually Shama, I said to her multiple times, I'm going to throw up.
Yes.
I didn't.
Yes.
But I felt like so many times that I was like, I'm there. I'm almost there.
Well, here's my question for you: is what do you think it was specifically that made you curl up?
So what the Kim family goes through and how they are sort of parasitic per se, tip of the cap, wink, wink, is that they sort of invade the Park household by like acting as if they don't know each other, but they're all doing different kinds of jobs. So the boy is a tutor for the daughter, right? The girl is an art therapist for the son in the Park family. Right. Then you have the dad who becomes a chauffeur, a driver, and then you have the mom become the nanny of the household. And it's like bit by bit, but it's the web of lies. And then this movie explores how that web of lies is deconstructed in such an uncomfortable and terrifying way that it's difficult for me to not contort into a ball.
Yeah.
But to go back to the question, what was the sort of tangible bodily experience that you went through throughout the three viewings, and how was this third viewing different from the second, and how was the second different from the first?
I think that there definitely was never a time I watched it where I didn't have a visceral response in some way.
Yeah.
I think that the first time I watched it, my visceral responses relied a lot more heavily on the context, the secrets that are had within the scenes. Right. Knowing exactly what every character knows, meaning like whenever someone walks into a scene, I know exactly what page they're on, and I know exactly what page another person's on, and the secrets that both are unaware of. That is so masterfully done that it's more that aspect that really gets me to like well up, because I am so nervous for the outcome.
Yeah.
Because, and this is something that they do absolutely expertly. I can't think of a movie, and this might be a personal thing, but I do think that the more I've talked to people about it, I know a lot of people that share this opinion that you need a good bit of comedy to get invested into a character.
For sure.
And the first half of this movie is hilarious.
Yes.
It is really clever. It's very funny. And because the lower class family, the Kims, are so clever and so witty, you can't help but fall in love with them. The moment that you laugh with them, and you're on the same page as them, you're invested.
Yeah.
And the moment that you're invested, every time they walk into a high-stakes situation, it hurts you a little bit.
And it's that sort of thing, yeah, but it's also like, oh, we're all in this together, you know?
We are all in this together, exactly.
Where what this movie does so well is the dramatic irony. For those of you who don't know, dramatic irony is when the audience knows something that the character does not.
Right.
And so part of what makes this film so enjoyable is that you go through the same sort of knowledge experience, right? And finding out information and experience, you know, with the Kim family.
Yeah.
Right? And how they sort of invade this household. And I'm using very sort of like negative terminology because I mean, it's not the greatest thing that they did, of course, but it largely it is a commentary on greed, and it's a commentary on classism that sort of drives this incredibly smart and clever family to a situation that they should not have gotten themselves in, and then doubly so when it's like halfway through the movie.
What I will say, and what I really, really appreciate about this movie, is that it could have very, very easily been poor people smart, rich people dumb. Yeah. It could have very easily been poor people smart and they like swindle the rich and that's that. But I think that something that, and he does this in a lot of his movies, Bong Joon-Ho, he gives credit to as many characters as he possibly can.
Yeah.
He really gives everyone the credit they deserve. Everyone in this movie is smart. It's not like there's one group that is and one group that isn't, or a couple characters that are left in the dust.
Right.
He really gives credit to every single character. And because of that, it's way more interesting because they have to work harder. They have to work harder to overcome that. It's all, the whole thing of like, the better the villain, the better the story, the more they had like the hero has to work. But the only thing that sets the Kim family back is a matter of resources. Outside of that, every one of the movies on equal ground. Yeah. Which is awesome, which is absolutely awesome. But also it's interesting that it's not just that we are looking at two special families. Which I love. We think that we're looking at two special families, meaning like an especially rich family and an especially poor family, or two especially brilliant families.
Right.
And you think that at first, and that's what gets you invested in them because you're like, oh, like they're so interesting and special and unique. But about halfway through the movie, it hits you the more that you see the world around them, the more that the camera pans out and you're able to really take a look at the world around them. They are not special.
Yeah.
That whenever they are in the gym, whenever the poor family's house floods, whenever the Kim family's house floods, and they have to go and stay in a gym with a bunch of other poor families whose houses have been wiped out because, and such a clever thing, by the way, that literally the wealthier you get, the higher you can live up altitude-wise and up on the mountain. And so whenever they're looking at the rain, they're like, oh, beautiful rain. But whenever the poor people see the rain, that means flood. That means we're fucked. That means my house can't take that. So they have to rush down the hill, literally down the social ladder to get to their house. That's so wild. But they're sitting in the gym, and you kind of take a look around and realize everyone's trying to make it.
Right.
Everyone's got a plan. Everyone's trying to do their shit. Like everyone thinks that they can get out of their situation. But that makes it all the more interesting because in order for everyone to get out of their situation, they have to then compete. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden, like, and that right there is the most human part of the movie, which is everyone's trying to be as civil as possible until they're confronted with competition, until they're confronted with, you can only go to the next level if you stomp on someone else, if you use someone else to get there.
There's construction outside of my apartment right now. So to give some context, I moved into a new place relatively recently, but now like I've never heard so much as a peep, occasionally a dog bark, but nothing to the extreme as my previous living abode. However, there are hammers being hammed.
Well, it kind of goes with our theory that the world knows when we're trying to do a podcast, and it attempts to ruin it.
Yes, indeed. But I'm sorry for derailing, but to go back to the step, because we have to acknowledge our own incompetence.
We have to.
But also
we kind of made that for ourselves. That every time that we fuck up, rather than going back, we just have to acknowledge it, and move on.
We must,
because that's the funniest and most honest version of the pod. Anyway, go ahead.
So I love that you brought up how not special at least the Kim family is, but the fact that they realize they need to stomp on somebody's head is when the movie pulls the twist, and it's one of the craziest twists like I've ever seen in a film, which is, for those of you who don't know, the original nanny of the household was the nanny of the original family in the home, who actually was the architect for the home as well. And so you find out after she's plucked out of there, she comes back in like the middle of a stormy, rainy night, looking like an insane person. She like charges in the house. Then she goes downstairs into the basement, and then she opens this like hidden bookcase door. And then there's another basement below that, and it's like this shelter that's inside of there. It turns out her husband is there and has been there for God knows how many years, and is legitimately an insane person.
Yeah.
And it's
which makes
terrifying.
sense. I think that he's been driven to that because he's been trapped underground for years.
Yes. And
being given just food every once in a while.
And then it's that sort of realization for the Kim family, too, of just, like, very, very different, of course, but it's also that sense of, like, oh, shit, we're kind of in this together, because foolishly so, and sometimes I think kind of confusingly, sometimes, like, what characters do is confusing, and I think what's really confusing is the fact that the family follows the nanny down. So when the original nanny comes in, it's just the mom who answers the doorbell. And to the nanny, she thinks that only the mom is there. And then all of a sudden, the family falls down the staircase. And then the nanny is able to put together that they're all a family. Like, they all... I mean, they're a parasite, for lack of a better word, roll credits. But... but it's that realization of like, oh shit, we're all in this together, and it's this terrifying of how they're all in that together, but they're also like so different from one another, and so the nanny was parasitic in her own way
because she was she was taking food from the family, taking things from the family to give to her husband,
right?
Trying to make a living for them and keep them alive, despite the fact that her nanny job, although it's for a very wealthy family, is not making enough to survive.
And specifically to pay off loan sharks that they fell into. Yeah. And so that's why the husband is hiding. Yeah. Right. But it makes the movie... first of all, that twist is so brilliantly well done in terms of the pacing and the shot work. And even the lighting, where even though it's a dark, stormy night, everything is still bright and warm in the house. And then you open up this hidden corridor, and it's the coldest lighting you will ever see. And it's just one shot of following the mom down the stairs. Yeah. And she's like, what the hell is going on? And what's beautiful about that moment, too, is that, once again, like I said earlier, that you are experiencing all of that for the first time time with the Kim family as
Right,
well.
right.
You know?
And it's also genius that the entire movie is about this original nanny. I mean, you don't know it at first, but it is about this original nanny getting phased out and beaten out by this family, by this parasite family that's coming in and acting like all these jobs and taking all these jobs, working for the rich family. And at first it is very realistic, this very normal, natural thing, which is people are competing for jobs.
Yeah.
Among the lower class families that are involved in the movie. And then it's interesting because in that moment, the moment they finally find the husband in the basement, they realize that this old nanny will do anything, literally whatever it takes, to stay in this house. She will stop at no lengths to stay in this house. And her husband's insane. So that kind of plays into the upstake in violence. And then the families have to literally fight to the death.
Yeah.
In order to, like, just for the job, just for a chance. That's so fascinating. And it's interesting that the entire movie, up until the last, 5 minutes, the rich family is completely unaware.
The entire
Partially
time.
because they choose to be, but mainly because the lower class is trying their absolute hardest to look okay.
Yeah. To be presentable.
And to look like they can play with the rich people.
Yeah. And we're definitely going to get into that theming, especially with the usage of smell in this movie. But I also want to bring up, and I kind of want to ask the question, because when I was watching it the second time, of course, naturally, the first time, I don't know if there's any way on a first viewing you could expect something absolutely insane happening, right? So then when you watch it for the second time, you're watching for hints, right? You're watching for hints of the twist, right? There was nothing I could find.
None.
There's none. Is that to the movie's betterment? Because usually when there's like a big twist or something, writers will purposefully put little breadcrumbs, right, to put you on the trail, but maybe never get you there, you know, specifically. But a breadcrumb, maybe a few, right? There was not, and I was looking out for it too. There's not a single one I could find for this movie. And so, Mac, I ask you, is it for the betterment of this movie?
Absolutely. Well, this is the question that we get into, and man, I love this topic. Why do writers, authors, artists foreshadow? Why is that a thing? Why is that a thing that people do? Is it just to be cute? Is it just for fun? No. But a lot of people do it.
But it's Chekhov's gun, but also,
why is Chekhov's gun there? Like, what does it do for the story?
Well, what's interesting too is that like this movie also has little moments and little Chekhovian guns kind of littered all over the place. There's this one. It's a very simple shot, right? But a quintessential moment to get the nanny out of the household is to make the park mom, think that the nanny has tuberculosis, right? And is coughing into the trash can and is actually coughing up blood, right? And so there's actually a very simple, wonderful, geographically shot where the nanny just uses the trash can at one point. You know, but it's like, it's something as simple as that. It's just like, this is a prop that it's not just used for this one moment. It's just used, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's something as simple as that. Or, for example, the nanny getting plum extract right from this jar, and then you see later on in the movie the nanny's husband when he comes out from the cellar and becomes absolutely insane.
Like
he drinks an entire jar of presumably plum extract or something from that like bookshelf, that bookcase, and then throws it down, right? Or just this one's more obvious, but the sort of stone from the mountain that Ki-woo, the boy from the Kim family, that he receives from his friend Min, and he just lugs it around for a lot of the movie, because I mean it's more heavy-handed in that regard that he's metaphorically attached to it, but then it literally becomes like a sort of like weapon later on in the movie as well. So there's like little Chekhovian guns throughout the movie, but it's never for the reveal.
Yeah, it's never specifically foreshadowing.
You know?
It's never like an audience would never be able to look at any of those things and say, I have a pretty good guess what's going to happen there.
Yeah.
There's no way of guessing any of the end of this movie.
No.
And like you said, watching back the second time, there's still not.
Yeah. And the best you can get is how the nanny, how it informs her character of the stakes that she has to like stay within this household.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah. So really, the only reason that you would ever use foreshadowing that hints to the end of the movie or that winks to it or anything like that would be if you need your audience to, after they get the end of after the plot twist, to say, oh, I guess that does make sense. I guess that would make sense. That is what they're trying to do. But you don't need that here because if for the story to make sense, the most sensical version, if she's been pulling this off if the old nanny's been pulling this off for years, is that you don't know shit. That's the most successful version. So the best way to do it is the audience doesn't know shit. So you can't have any foreshadowing.
And you make the audience think the entire time, oh, we know everything. We know everything.
Exactly.
Once again, it's a brilliant use of dramatic irony.
It's true.
Where
that you give us so much information that we think that we know everything.
Correct. Because this movie is about the Kim family when there's actually this one piece of information that's literally beneath the household that nobody knows about.
Is also kind of interesting that we're placed in that position because that is kind of the same position that the Park family's in.
Yeah.
Where they are given so much information that they think they know it.
Right.
But they simply do not.
But it's all lies. And you find out through
and then
the
Kim family knows
so
much. And I think because the Kim family has so many secrets, they're so not worried about everyone else's. That they're like, oh, like we're so worried about our little journey with the Park family, with the rich family, that they don't even notice that the old nanny could possibly have anything going on other than, I'm sad that I've lost this job because this is my only source of income. That's what you imagine is happening.
Right.
And then she has a husband in the basement.
Yeah, exactly. And so, the trickling of information in this movie and the pacing. I know I love talking about pacing. But it's so well done.
As in, like the speed of a scene, or do you mean the rate at which we get information as an audience?
The rate, and so particularly, what's so interesting about this film is that it feels so long, and it's actually only a little bit over 2 hours. I, for some reason, remember this movie being like a 3-hour film,
but weirdly not in a bad way. What is that? What is that?
It's long because it's a stressful experience.
Yeah,
in a really good way. Yeah. Like, it's fine. I mean, look, when you suggested for us to do this film, I had a moment, I think it's commonly regarded as a sigh, because then I realized, shit, I have to live through this. Again, mind you, it goes to show how privileged I am, but I have to live through the experience of watching this movie and the stress that comes from it. Yeah. Like, I never had a breathing experience with a movie like this, to the point, I remember sitting in the theater and there was like a couple or like some people sitting in front of me, and they were like turning around at some points too, because I'm sure they were thinking to themselves, the person behind me is a crazy person. Sure. What the hell's wrong with them? That's funny. I never had such a bodily response from a film, and so when you suggested it, I was like, oh shit. Yeah. Right? But what made this movie feel so long per se is the stress that comes from it, but that's not because the movie is bad. That's because of how actually good the movie is at trickling that information. That at first the stress is the web of lies, then the stress is keeping all of those secrets, and then the stress is, oh my god, there's a guy in the basement! Yeah. And then the stress is like, how are they going to get out of this? And then the stress of like, is the Park family going to find out? There's all of this stress that's culminating. But when I was watching, and we'll get to what you were going to say, but when I was watching the second viewing, I was like, oh, wow, holy shit, I didn't realize this happened so early in the film. I thought it was like later on in the film when the dad becomes the chauffeur for Mr. Park, right? Right. And later on in the film when the mom becomes the nanny, right? I thought these things were so much farther. I thought it was so much farther that Ki-woo kissed the Park daughter. I thought that was later on as well. So it was like a lot of things are happening fast.
Right.
And quickly, but it's hard for it to feel fast when you're like, oh shit, the entire time.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Well, yeah, I totally understand what you mean there. It's weird because so many movies, the faster they feel, the better they are.
Yeah.
That you're like, oh man, that was only like 30 minutes. It felt like 30 minutes, but it was an hour and a half. Yeah. But with this movie, you're right. I actually loved the fact that it felt longer because it felt like a full. I don't want to say full journey. Like a full life experience.
Right.
It wasn't that we were getting this specific story. It was that we were getting this set of stories.
Yeah.
And in that way, it felt whole. It felt round, which was awesome.
Yeah. And it's also that once the second half of the movie hits, once the Park family leaves and the family is there for the Kim family is there for the night, and then the nanny comes back, and then towards like sort of like the big climax, the events of the film that follows afterwards, like it's less than 24 hours. You know, what happens, you know, when the nanny comes back, when they find out the husband's downstairs, and then the flooding of the household, of the Kim household, and then they come back the next morning for a birthday party, you know, and then members are dying.
Yeah.
Like that's all in less than 24 hours, right? But it feels so long. And so once again, watching it a second time, I'm like, oh shit, I didn't realize Aristotle's, you know, time was also a factor right now. Now, mind you, like, I mean, the first half of the movie, like, I'm sure it takes place over like a few weeks or maybe even like a month or two, right? That's sort because it needs to, right? It wouldn't make sense otherwise if things were like boom, 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 or at least not too much. But then all of a sudden, there's like a little bit of Aristotle's time in place that it's using some of those unities where, like, of course, like most of this film just takes place in this one household, but then all of a sudden, for half the film, it takes place over like a 12-hour period.
Right.
That becomes super duper intense and high stakes for everybody involved except for the Park family.
Yeah. Now the one thing that I will highly recommend is that if you are watching this movie for the first time, or actually even if you plan on watching it in the future, watch it with people.
If you haven't already watched it at this point,
then I mean, screw you. I'm so sorry that
we put the twist on you.
Yeah, we really just
twist and
ruined the whole thing. But twist and shout, twist baby, yeah. I highly recommend watching it with people. Yeah. It's a different experience to watch it with people than by yourself. Because kind of like Danny said, whenever I was in the theater watching it, me and Emma were there, my girlfriend, and we were sitting there watching it, and about halfway through the movie, we realized that we hadn't like taken a full breath since the beginning. And so we started breathing a little bit, and we just kind of looked around us because we were in a theater with like packed. And we were just like looking around us, and we started making eye contact with the people around us.
Oh my God.
And we were just laughing. We were like, this is the craziest shit. Like, this is wild.
Yeah.
Are you watching the same thing I'm watching right now? And it was awesome. It was really cool.
It's very rare to have a a theater experience like that.
That everyone in the theater is having the same wild ride.
Right.
Yeah, that's usually a theater-specific thing. But to have it in a movie theater is special.
Right.
Really special.
And the only other time that I could like think of that is when, and I shit you not, Rise of the Planet of the Apes. When the monkey, the chip, with James Franco, and then I don't know, the primate. Let me say the primate. Sorry, Miss Goodall. The primate is it just yells out no, and then the movie theater is silent, and I was like, this is a moment.
Yeah.
I was like in 8th grade or something like that in middle school, and I was like, this is a moment. This is wonderful.
We're all experiencing this together. Yeah.
Yeah.
When we come back from break,
yes.
I would like to talk about the year 1939.
What?
And why I think that helps solidify Parasite's place in terms of all-time great movies.
Wow, the GOAT.
All right, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Now, just let me explain. First of all, it's free. Second of all, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a whole bunch more. And third, now this is really important, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Hear me when I say no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. So, we left off with the year 1939.
Why?
Why? Here we go. Here's the explanation. The year 1939, for any film geek out there, is widely renowned as the best year of cinema. It was. It went down in history as the year that had the most great movies and had the most pivotal movies. The industry changed in the year 1939. Now, the reason that I think this is important to think about is because I, being a film geek, I really do believe that 2019 was the next 1939.
Oh, wow.
This might be my sizzle serve.
Ho, ho, ho.
I think 2019, and I promise I'll bring out lists in a second. I think 2019 was maybe the best year for film I can think of.
It did have Hobbs and Shaw.
Hobbs and Shaw is incredibly important.
Okay, but on a more serious note.
But on a more serious note, so let me list some movies from 1939, and I'll make a point with them.
Okay.
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, The Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind, Stagecoach, The Story of the Lost Chrysanthemum, Wuthering Heights. Sorry, The Last Chrysanthemum, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Of Mice and Men. Unbelievable movies across the board, right? Across the board, unbelievable movies.
Yeah.
Some of the best of all time. Now, Gone with the Wind was the runaway favorite that year.
Yeah.
That's the one that everyone recognizes as one of the best movies of all time and the best movie of 1939.
But enough about that movie because, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Oh, you. Anyway, I'm
so sorry. I'm really sorry.
But this is another might be another sizzle serve, but I really do believe this. I think that we give Gone with the Wind maybe more credit than it deserves. I think it's fantastic.
I haven't seen Gone with the Wind, so I can't tell you.
I don't think it's as good as we have deemed it. I think what gives it so much credit is that it's the best movie from the best year of cinema. I think that's what makes Gone with the Wind such a historical checkpoint. Because it was the best movie from the best year of film. I think the same can be said about Parasite. I think that if 2019 is one of the best years of film, in my opinion, the best year of film, but if it is one of the best years of film of all time, Parasite is the best movie of the best year of film. Let me name some movies from 2019 to maybe sway you, maybe convince you that it's one of the best years of film.
Yeah.
Period.
Okay.
Parasite. Mm-hmm. Marriage Story. Mm-hmm. The Irishman. I know a lot of people didn't like that movie, but The Irishman, I think, was a big
I like how
movie.
the third movie on this list was. I know a lot of people didn't like it. So what are you trying to say? What are you trying to say?
It's just the middle of the list.
What are you trying to say?
It's
All right,
the middle
keep going.
Pain and Glory. Lighthouse. Little Women. Knives Out. Jojo Rabbit.
But hold on. I understand. I understand what you're trying to get at. I understand.
Jordan Peele's 1917.
Yes.
Last Black Man in San Francisco. Midsommar.
Hobbs and Shaw.
Hobbs and fucking Shaw.
Okay, but the point is, I understand what you're trying to get at, but we can't assess the sort of historical backdrop for the year 2019, as the year 2019 was only, to this date of recording this podcast, 2 years ago. Right, it's hard for us to really understand the scope of the impact of what 2019 is going to provide.
Right, which is why we can't say it is 1939 yet, but I think that if we're just looking at what year in film history has the most great movies, 2019 is a contender. Easy top 3. For me, it's number 1, but for most people, it has to be a top 3. Just the sheer size of great movies in 2019 that are like, I'm going to show my kids someday. 2019's really up there.
I think so too. I think 2019 is a great year. And that, listen, your serves do sizzle. But it's hard for me to be like, your serves are wrong, because
Sure.
we're not at that point in time yet. I mean,
look back.
I think it's going to... it needs at least like a decade, right, to understand the sort of impact that 2019 is going to have on cinema. Like maybe because of Parasite, there's going to be more of a sort of foreign film appreciation, at least domestically in the U.S.
That was big.
I mean, maybe with something akin to something like Avengers Endgame and like Joker, right? We saw like how wonderful comic book movies can be beyond, like The Dark Knight, right? Where The Dark Knight was like a flash in the pan, but like once again, we're seeing something that's like very, very unique. And then we have Knives Out. Well, in the flash in the pan of the sense of like there isn't and wasn't, and perhaps and eventually there was like superhero movies or like comic book movies that was like The Dark Knight and the quality of that trilogy as well. And then maybe with something like Knives Out that we're going to see really a proper, more wonderful return to the whodunnits in film and
at the very least, even if you disagree with me, at the very least, statistically, people went and really fucking saw movies in 2019. People really went to see movies in 2019 more than they have in a long time. And it's hard. It's hard getting people to movies these days because it's so easy to stay in. It's so easy to not go to the theaters. But people went to the fucking theaters in 2019.
And I know with a movie like Sound of Metal, for example, like how that movie experiments with sound as well.
The Irishman experimenting with color,
And I think like a lot of these movies are fantastic, but once again, it's hard for us to properly analyze. And I know that's not the most exciting thing to hear on an auditory form of media where I'm like, maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, I don't know. But it's like that's a hell of a take to have.
Usually you're the one with the hot take.
It's so early, but I do have a sizzle serve.
You do? Give it to me.
Have a sizzle serve, and it's.
Make me sizzle.
I think this serve is going to sizzle a little bit.
Good. I'm ready. I'm
a little bit of, touch yourself. Ooh, it's hot, But this sizzle serve for the movie Parasite that came out in the year 2019, directed by Bong Joon-Ho, is that Parasite is a worse movie the second time you watch it.
Oh,
so sometimes
knowing the twist is not as good. Yeah.
Right, and I think Okay, wait. Let me explain. Because sometimes you're gonna watch one thing or another that's actually better the second viewing. Right. Let's take something for example that we reviewed on this show. Sorry for marking you with my pen as well. I zapped you. Shout out to the boys in Orlando from 10 years ago who used to zap each other with pens, whatever that means. But
Jesus.
Just to bring up something that we discussed on the show that was better, at least for me, the second time viewing it, was the show Berserk.
Yeah.
And I thought Berserk was so much better the second time, looking at it as a character study and knowing that sort of twist that happens in the end, seeing the sort of cause and effect and what really brings out that twist of motivation at the very end
and you already trust
of that show. Yeah, exactly. And so the entirety of that show is like, oh, this is fine. And then at the end of the show, you're like, holy shit. But what happens in this film, and I think partially like what makes it so great and fantastic the first time, is, as we said in the first part, the lack of breadcrumbs. That the twist of the husband of the nanny being in the basement of the basement is such a big, scary, terrifying twist.
Yeah.
And when I say terrifying, I mean it's like terrifying for what it does to other characters, right? Yeah. But what makes it so terrifying is that there's nothing there for you to expect it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're watching it a second time, and because you're already armed with the experiences, in a way, at least for me, I was sort of putting it up as a shield of like knowing to myself, okay, we know the guy's in the basement. Okay, we know like this is going to happen to this character and this character. Okay, like we have to, literally, I was preparing myself mentally and physically for what the movie was going to do because it was such a shocking experience. But that was because I was armed with already knowing those things. And so then watching for more like character motivation in this film, or just sort of like because I wasn't so caught up in the moment, I was able to notice some other little things. Like, for example, there's one point in the movie, it's actually at the very end, where, spoiler, you know, if you haven't been spoiled already, I believe it's pronounced Ki-taek, but the dad of the Kims, he kills, Dong-ik, who is the dad of the Parks, right?
Yeah.
I for some reason, I was like, that makes perfect sense in the first viewing, but I wasn't able to fully understand the second viewing. But we'll get back to that, and we're gonna really discuss that in further detail later on. But then one big moment where I'm like, how did you miss that? Is when he's going down the stairs and he's escaping to the basement as well, and so there should be a pool of blood because. So the son, Ki-woo, he was going down the stairs, he dropped the rock, right? And then all of a sudden, the husband of the nanny, like, ambushes him, and he tries to escape up the stairs, but he's pulled back, and then the husband of the nanny uses the rock, the stone that he gets at the beginning of the film, and, like, crushes his head, right? He manages to survive at the end, but there's, like, a pool of blood, right? And I don't know, but there's something so, like, terrifying about that pool of blood, right? That I was surprised that there wasn't like a shot or a moment of like, what was that for when the dad was going down the stairs. I don't know why that moment I was so hung up on that moment, but I was like, that felt so significant to me, like that image and how, first of all, this movie plays with images. It's beautiful, wonderful, and eloquently, and it's just like the scenic design of the set dressing is so well done and how it informs character, but...
Yeah,
it was weird for this one moment to not have this scenic choice inform character, right? When so much of the movie, right, where once again we're going back down to the deeper basement, and we have that little, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like this like needle sort of thing where you stack like receipts on as well. But the husband of the nanny was actually putting condoms through that, and I was like, that informs me so much of who he is and what he values and what the hell is going on in his head. Just that one little moment of showing us the space, I'm like, that's more than enough information just right then and there. So I was surprised to then not give this beautiful character the opportunity, just even if it's literally a second long of like, what the hell is this? But then still making the choice to keep going down. And so and then you're noticing things more and more. Once again, why is the family going downstairs and being nosy? Like, they know the stakes are so high for them not to be discovered. Why would they put themselves in that scenario when the mom can just tell them what the hell is going on afterwards, right? I don't know, and like maybe that's just, and I think I'm just indicting the characters more so than like the actual writing of the film, but I wasn't sure if like a moment like that was fully informed. Just stuff like that. Yeah. And so, but now I want to go back and maybe I'm denying whatever you have to say, but I want to sort of go back to and hit on, why does Ki-taek kill Dong-ik?
That's a good question.
And so what happens at the climax of the film, where Ki-taek's daughter Ki-jung gets stabbed by the crazy husband, and he's trying to Father Kim, and he's trying to hold down like the blood and trying to stop her from bleeding from that giant wound that she has, and so that's all that he can think about. But then you have Mr. Park, like, what are you doing? Get off. Like, I need you to drive us. Like, I need you right now. And then he's just, like, in that moment where it's just no, where he's making that active choice of, like, I'm not going anywhere. That eventually the Park is like, okay, yeah, like, throw me the keys. And then he doesn't throw them far enough because he's still stuck in this moment of, like, oh, my God, my family is dying more ways than one. Like, my life is dying right around me, and then I have somebody who's from this upper class that just does not care at all about what I'm going through. And so maybe that's why he kills Mr. Park. There's also a moment where smell, as I was alluding to earlier, smell is brought up a lot of times during this film, where there's at one point the son of the Parks it kind of notices that the mom and the dad of the Kims is like, oh, they smell similar. Why they smell the same? And then there's a moment where Dad Kim is driving Young Kyo, who is the mom of the Parks, and driving her, and then she like clogs up her nose, and then there's also a conversation that they overhear where like he smells bad. Like there's constantly moments of just, and I think I'm trying to figure this out in the moment as well, where maybe why Ki-taek kills Dong-ik is because like Dong-ik is overcome by the smell and of the nanny's husband, and is like so taken aback from it that like right in front of him his family is dying, and then you have all of a sudden this asshole to him, right? He's an asshole in the moment. This asshole is like just taking the moment to like smell and then react to that smell. And that's what's important to him right now, that this smell is repulsive. Like that's what's going on through his head, not that somebody is dying right in front of him.
Right.
And so I think that's a big thing as to maybe why, but for some reason that moment was so much clearer. And for some reason I thought in the first viewing I thought that Dong-ik put it together that the family, like the Kim family, was actually all together, but he actually, I don't think he ever did. Right, he died not knowing that. I don't know why I had that experience on the first viewing, but like I said, I was just shocked. I think this time where I was like, why exactly did that happen? Because his life is already gone, but why would he further throw it away? And it has to be like anger and frustration and bitterness in the moment, right? But I wasn't entirely sure, and maybe it's part of it too, is that coming, it's that bubble, and it's finally that bubble is popping, finally that volcano is erupting, and I think partially because I am privileged in that regard, it's something I'm never going to understand, and maybe that's part of it too. I'm not entirely sure, but I was just intrigued by that moment because I couldn't piece together the why, and yet at the same time I wasn't like, this is the wrong choice for this movie, right? Definitely the wrong choice, at least maybe in my mind, I don't know, maybe the wrong choice for this character to kill somebody, but I'm not sure if it's the wrong choice for this movie.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it made sense, obviously, with the themes and what they were going for story wise. I think it made sense, and also I think it was earned. I think that everyone had been pushed, including the audience, had been pushed to such a point of stress that it would make sense for them to officially fly off the deep end. In the same way that the husband did in the basement, in the same way that he was pushed to the ends of his depth and had to take that leap off into insanity. Now, I am curious, though, because you were talking about how the second watching is not nearly as good as the first. I want to know how much of a dip off that is for you. Now, I'm not a big fan of like rating things 1 to 10, but if you were to rate the first watch 1 to 10 and the second watch 1 to 10, what would that difference look like?
Okay, so first of all, I would still, regardless of the experience that I had the second watch and maybe even the third or fourth or however many for the rest of my life, I would certainly still recommend this movie to other people, right? Like there's no way I couldn't, right?
Yeah, I was never questioning that
like the first watch is like a 10 out of 10, right? That once again, like I said before, that I never had such a bodily experience to a movie. I didn't even know that was possible for a film, right? I knew that, and I'm grateful for it. I knew that was possible in theater, right? Because all of it's in person and you're like breathing with the person on stage, right? You're literally sharing that breath. But then I didn't know that experience was possible through film. And so like for that, even like that reason alone, I couldn't help but recommend it 110,000% to other people. It's one of the best film experiences I've ever had in my entire life, right? But then on the second watch, like you're still realizing you're realizing other things that are great about this film, right? And so what keeps you so, throughout the first watch is not as, present on the second watch, but you notice things a lot more. For example, you notice, like I said before, you notice how much the scenic design and the set dressing really informs the space and how these characters act, right? I mean, this was a house that was specifically built for this movie. This was a set specifically constructed for this movie to such a point that Bong Joon-Ho had, and I think the scenic designer had architects look at it, and then the architect said, who the hell would live in a place like this? This is awful. This is pure idiocy, right? But at the same time, even though maybe you're sitting there as an audience and you're thinking to yourself, man, this is a weird house. At the same time, you're like, holy shit. But with how the blocking and the staging is constructed for this film, and especially in moments where like characters are hiding from one another, regardless of whether it's very, very low stakes or very, very high stakes, holy shit, like it's so well done. And that was something that I was like, I kind of noticed in the first time, but I really became cognizant of it the second time.
Yeah.
And I really became cognizant a lot more of the like really clever manipulation that the family went through on the second viewing that I had.
Yeah.
But once again, like nothing is going to beat the reaction from the first time. And so it's so difficult also to compare the second viewing or the third viewing or the fourth viewing to the first viewing, because I'm never going to get that back. It's one of those things of just like, how do you re-experience something again? And sometimes you can't.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Where there are some like movies or TV shows or video games where it's just like, I wish I could do the Men in Black thing of wiping my memory just so I can experience this for the first time again.
Yeah. The you kind of touched on it a little bit. The big thing that I will be taking from this movie that I'm going to have to use in my own work or in my own practice is the attention to detail.
Yeah.
The absolute attention to detail. There was, if you pause at any point in this movie, the visual that you are seeing is contributing thematically to the story.
Yep.
Which is, oh my gosh, so hard to do. So hard to do and takes so much focus. And so much understanding of the topic that you're talking about, as well as the story that you're telling. Goodness gracious, Bong Joon-Ho. Because this is the thing. That's a director's job.
Right.
And I can think of very few directors that have such a clear vision. And people talk about vision, but vision doesn't mean you do what I say. Vision means I know exactly what story I'm trying to tell, so much so that no one else in the room can. Because there's no way that I explain a story to you and we have the same, like the perfect same understanding and vision in our mind.
Mm-hmm.
So only one person can be the director.
Yeah.
Especially with something that's complex.
Right.
And he really did. And I very rarely talk about vision, and I very rarely give credit to vision. But goodness gracious, I give utmost credit to Bong Joon-Ho and his vision in this. But also, yes, the absolute attention to detail. This reminds me a lot of two movies. The Quiet Place. Actually, part 1 and part 2. Sure. Quiet Place, both of those.
Okay.
As well as Silence, which is a Martin Scorsese movie. Both of these are similar in that they are mostly silent, but they do two things very well, which is, one, the silence is used as suspense. The silence is not just there. It's only used in moments that are building suspense, as well as
if the silence is a character, as if the silence is dialogue.
Sure,
you know?
Sure. Well, yes, and on that note,
as if the silence is a character,
if you were to, and I think I talked about this like at the beginning of season 1 of our podcast, that my favorite exercise as a director is you should be able to watch a movie or watch a story like a basketball game, meaning you should be able to mute it, turn the sound off completely, and still know the score.
Yeah.
And still know who's winning the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You should at all times as you're watching be able to in your mind see that little scorecard in the bottom left corner that tells you how many points each team has.
Yeah.
I love that exercise, and goodness gracious, this movie hits it.
You're so right. You're absolutely correct. Yeah. I also love the fact that you sort of inadvertently dissed directors such as the Coen brothers or the Wachowski sisters, because you were like, only one person can be a director. Only one person can have a vision.
Well, no. I mean, more than one person can direct can direct a story, and I actually love that practice. I do like directing with other people, but not with something this complex, not with something this careful.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing
because
something,
you know how it's very, very clear how specific this movie
if
is.
you're doing something that has a clear story and clear characters, but the challenge is in the movie making, then you should be doing it with another person. That makes sense. If you're doing something that is pretty clear in the movie making, like Parasite, but has such complex and difficult story and characters, that's, I think, when you should have one person at the helm of what story you're telling.
I disagree.
You disagree that?
Well, no, I disagree that I wouldn't call Parasite very complicated characters. Parasite, I think, on the surface, is very, very simple. That it's about a lower class family invading this upper class household. But what makes it complex is the movie making. It's the shots where the camera is panning to the left, and it's just such a simple moment of like still keeping in the first household when Min comes in, when the dad is still in the space at the dinner table and he gets up but he hits his head on the shelving that's right above him. Like a simple moment as like that to show off character and to show off given circumstances and to show off what these characters have to go through consistently, right?
Right,
and
but I think that what makes it complex is not the film aspect of those moments. It is like we talked about earlier, it's the pacing. Sorry, you're right. I don't think it's the characters that are complex, but I also don't think it's the filmography. I think they do have very impressive videographers on set and cinematographers.
Yeah.
But I think that what makes it so complicated and what makes it so interesting, like we talked about at the beginning, is the rate at which you get information.
Yeah.
In which only Bong Joon-Ho can decide that.
Okay. And and I think those two things definitely work in tandem with this film, right? Because of the fact of, like, I mean, we were talking about it, like how the set is constructed, right? And then, but the set serves the story, and the story serves the set, right? Yeah. They're working together as a cohesive part. That you're absolutely correct that there is a bunch of moving, functioning parts to this movie.
That would be what I would want to like talk to Bong Joon-Ho about.
Yeah,
is what is your job as a director in this process? Is it to be the single source, or is it to explain it and write such a rich script that you can give up power?
Yeah.
Is it the lack of power or the need of power that makes you succeed as a director in this specific movie?
Yeah.
Not for all of his movies, but in this one specifically, because...
But then you also see it like a very similar power structure, but of course how it's navigated is very, very different. It's like Snowpiercer, like another Bong Joon-Ho flick, which is a fantastic movie, but once again, that's still that classism, right? And then how they combat it literally. And once again, it's another like it's a geographic sort of difference where like the levels couldn't be more clearer, right? And then I think, and maybe this is also once again part of it too as to why Ki-taek kills Dong-ik is because, and for some reason this wasn't mentioned to me, but I didn't really notice it. And I was like, holy shit, you're right. Is because once again I watched this once more with Shama, and there's this one moment in the film where the Kim family, three of them, is hiding under the table in the living room. And first of all, there's no TV in the living room, which I just realized that, like, you're never going to see that anymore.
Whenever you're talking about the layout of the house, the very first thing that I think of is it is very unrealistic that a family doesn't have a TV in their living room.
Yeah, especially that kind of family. Yeah,
especially that type of family.
Yeah.
And that the couch is facing outside rather than
inside,
slightly facing a
that couch should totally face the wall with the TV, right?
Yeah.
But, like, once again, part of it is like
Or
this
at least
movie
face
has
another
earned so
couch.
much respect. Yeah.
At least face another couch.
Yeah.
Like make it a communal thing.
Yeah.
But just for the only sitting area to only be looking outside, it's kind of weird. Yeah.
Yes. But
you need it for the BJ scene.
But then.
No, I'm kidding. Not the BJ scene.
Well, it's not
The
it's
sex
an
scene. My bad,
HJ.
sorry.
It's an HJ.
You're right.
scene.
You're right.
But anyways, but the point is that wow. So yeah, you have the Kim family hiding under that table, and then you have Mr. and Mrs. Park on the couch, and they don't know that they're there. And so they start essentially fingering each other. But then what's really interesting, and Shama pointed this out to me, is the dialogue in that scene between the two Parks is that they're both condemning the sort of lower class in terms of just like, for example, Mr. Park is like, I'm glad Mr. Kim never crosses the line. I would be very upset if he did. You know, it always seems like he's right there, but he doesn't cross the line. But he has this smell, like this like Subway fishy smell that doesn't smell very good. And he's like condemning that smell and that lower class sort of atmosphere that Mr. Kim inadvertently brings into the room. But then in that like same breath, he's talking about his previous chauffeur having panties from somebody else underneath the seat. Turns out it was all part of a very clever plan by Ki Jung. But it's like panties under the seat, and then brings it up with his wife, and then he's like, if you wear those panties, I'll be so hard right now. Excuse me for not using other language. And then
you're being as eloquent as possible. It's nice.
And then she's also like, oh, do you want me to do drugs, right? And so they're also turning each other on, acting like people who are lower class and less privileged and addicted to drugs and smell bad and are dirty.
Yeah.
And then it's doubly so when they're just having, you know, they're pleasuring each other on the couch, and you have this shot, this bird's eye view that's up above, and you see them pleasuring each other on the couch, and then the camera sort of pans, and all you see is the table.
Yeah.
And you know that those three members of the Kim family, the dad, the daughter, and the son, are hearing all of this. Mm-hmm. And they're literally, once again, geographically below, and once again, the Parks are none the wiser.
Yeah.
But the Kims just have to lie down there and just suck it up.
Yeah.
That they just, you know, we just have to deal with this right now. We have to hear this. There's nothing we can do, because at the end of the day, even though those two Parks are in an incriminating position, we're the ones that have everything to lose and not them. Yeah,
it kind of reminds me of rugby and soccer in England. That. And I'm saying soccer instead of football. I know my faults. I'm just saying it for the general American audiences that are listening. So, someone told me a long time ago, whenever I started getting into rugby, and it was a British guy. It was a guy from England, and he and I was like, so, what types of people? Like, are there any stereotypes with rugby or like with soccer? Like, is there like a stereotype that the rugby person falls into in England? And he was like, yeah, it's pretty widely accepted that rugby is what the rich people play to feel poor, and soccer is what the poor people play to feel rich. And I thought that was so interesting to think about. And I was like, and people know this. And he was like, yeah. Like, really the only people I can think of that are playing rugby in England are fairly wealthy. And it's because it's such a like visceral and like gross and roll around the mud sport. And soccer feels like a more posh sport in England.
Huh.
Because it's more established and it's more...
And, like, still recognizing the fact that this is generalization and, like, it's not going to be true with everyone, but...
Yeah.
Interesting.
I thought it was interesting, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also just to recognize that both are trying to feel the opposite. That the rich are trying to feel dirty at times because it makes them feel, I don't know, more in touch with their surrounding and their earth. And the poor people are like... Why the fuck would you want that?
Yeah.
I'm trying to...
Like, you asshole.
Feel clean.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we're working so hard to get out of this situation, and you're like, ooh, we're feeling dirty. Ooh. And it's just like, that's disgusting. Like, you have no idea.
Right.
You know? And once again, like, how this movie plays into that theme of just, like, shit. You know, it's so eloquently well done.
Is that how you would summarize the theme of the movie?
Shit. Yes, in more ways than one. Yeah. But this movie is not shit. But this movie is the shit. If
there we go.
If you catch my drift, there we go. How about that?
Yeah.
But
that shit is drifting.
But no, I mean this movie is incredible. I also want to say really fast before we start truly wrapping this bad boy up is that I want to give my gold medal, and I'm not really sure, actually, honestly, how to deliver names to people who are from East Asia, where their surnames typically come first and then their proper names, but I suppose I'll just do the surnames first, how they're credited, just generally. So I want to give my gold medal to, and hopefully once again I'm pronouncing this correctly, is Yo Jung Cho, or at least credited in the American credits, Cho Yo Jung, is she was the mother to the Parks. Yeah. She was Young Kyo, and so I wanted to give the gold medal to her because she is not a smart character in this movie, but what makes her so wonderful to watch is like, yeah, she's not a smart character in this movie, but she is like a mother who loves her children so much. And so even though maybe sometimes you're like, why doesn't she realize what the hell is going on in her own household? Part of it is like, of course she wouldn't. I mean, like, she's not that well educated in that regard, right? She's not very street smart per se. But I think a big part of it is because of the acting. Yeah, I think a big part of it is just like devoting herself 100% to like caring about her children, and that being the only thing that crosses her mind. And sometimes like the vain things as well. That like how this character is so well informed by the actor that how could this character even realize what is happening in her own household? So I just wanted to give credit to her because I feel like everybody in this movie is fantastic, but I think she really, really is like the linchpin that holds the storytelling of the film together. Because if she was acted poorly, then you're like, this movie's ridiculous. How did nobody figure out what the hell was going on?
Right. But it honestly reminds me of Florence Pugh. In that she took a character that would otherwise be annoying and made it sensical and clear and kind of badass in ways.
Yeah, and lovely to watch as well.
Yeah. That's a really hard job right there. Ooh,
because it's so easy to play the idiot. It's so easy to fall into that trap. So how do you, as an actor, devote yourself 100% to what you care about? And it's like, well, obviously you just do that, right? But it's such an easy trap to fall into.
It is.
So I do want to commend her for doing that. And once again, the question is, how the hell is that an easy trap? And it just is, because it feels so sensational to like, play the archetype or play something at the surface, as opposed to just like, no, this is just who I am, and this is just what I have to go through. That occasionally, like, one person's instincts for a character is not necessarily the one that's strongest for the storytelling of the film or the piece of theater.
Similarly, my gold medal is going to Kang Ho Song. Again, probably butchering that. This guy's been killing it for a while now.
Yeah.
Him and Bong Joon-Ho, couple movies together. Everything that I've ever seen him in, he's been like, he has gotten his check. He has done his job. And in this, that for me, there was a lot for that. A lot of that Kim family riding on him and his performance. That he has to feel like a leader and somehow also powerless. Yeah. And I think that he really, like, I never felt bad for him. Well, that's not true. I did feel bad for him, but I never thought that he wasn't in charge of the family. And in that culture, in this movie, that was his job, and that's what the family was looking for him to do, and he did it, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Excellent job from him, seasoned vet. Yeah, masterclass.
And once again, like, just commending also the directing and the writing and all the little pieces that were a part of this film, because this is genuinely a masterpiece.
It is.
Even though, once again, I still stick by the sizzle serve, that this was it's weaker, the future times that you view it, but hardly anything can be as strong as the first time.
Now, here's a big question, and I'm not going to set us up for our Season 2 tier list, but is this better than The Bob Emergency?
That's such a weird question, and it's apples and oranges.
Because we put that in the S tier last season.
But, like, also, yes. I mean, it is.
I agree.
Like, I mean, it is.
Which, like, sets us up for an awesome Season 2,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, okay, good.
But, Mac, let's wrap this bad boy up for sure.
I recommend it. You recommend it?
I recommend it.
There it is.
There's really nothing more to say. I mean, we've said it all right here, right now. Now, what you wanted us to review, and you wanted us to be frauds, was a comedy special. I'm not really sure, but I've been recommended as well, at least by my brother, multiple times to watch this. And now we're finally going to, and partially because, you know, Mac was like, we have to. And I'm like, no, we don't, but I will, but not because of you.
Thank you. I honestly, as long as we're doing it, I
hate you. It's Bo Burnham's special Inside.
Yeah.
That just came out relatively recently, I think.
And I'm not saying it's amazing. I'm saying it's fascinating. We'll talk.
We shall. Goodbye.